everyone, and welcome. Today, we're doing a deep dive on something I think we've all experienced at one point or another, manipulation tactics.
Oh yeah, those sneaky psychological strategies people use to try and get their way.
Right. And for this deep dive, we're taking a look at this YouTube video from The Analyst, all about manipulation. They break down 11 common tactics, and seriously, watching this video was a wild ride.
I hear that. It can be kind of unsettling when you start to recognize these tactics in your own life.
Seriously. So today, let's try to arm ourselves with the knowledge to see these tactics coming and hopefully protect ourselves from them.
Sounds like a plan. Recognizing manipulation is the first step to disarming it.
100%. So the video jumps right in with gaslighting.
Gaslighting, okay.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
I have heard of it, yes.
And to illustrate this one, they start with this whole scenario about a beach trip.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Okay, so imagine you and your partner are planning a vacation.
Okay.
And they are so gung-ho about going to the beach. Super excited, like totally on board with the beach plan.
Right.
Then the day comes to actually go on the trip, and they completely deny ever agreeing to the beach. They're like, no way, I hate the beach, I've always hated the beach.
Well,
And you're like, wait a minute.
what's happening right now?
Yeah, am I losing it? Did we not just have this whole conversation?
Right, you're questioning your whole reality.
Totally. It's like that moment when you lose your keys, but it's like your entire memory is the thing you're searching for.
Yeah. You start to doubt yourself, your perception of events.
Exactly. And fun fact, the term gaslighting actually comes from this play where a husband manipulates his wife by dimming the gaslights and then insisting that she's imagining it.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's all about making someone doubt their own sanity.
That's really messed up.
Yeah, and the thing is, I feel like it often starts so subtly, like it's not always this big dramatic thing.
Right. It's more like this slow drip, drip, drip of doubt that just kind of erodes your confidence over time.
It's like that saying, death by 1,000 cuts.
Exactly. And the scariest thing is, the more someone gaslights you, the more you might start to rely on them to kind of validate your own reality.
Like they become the sole source of truth.
Right. Which is a dangerous, dangerous place to be.
It's true. If you can't even trust your own judgment and your own memories, that's a very slippery slope. So let's say you are catching these subtle digs at your reality. How do you even push back against that?
It can be really difficult. But one thing that they recommend is documentation.
Documentation.
Yeah, like keep track of conversations if you can. If it's something that happens more over text, take screenshots or something,
So you've got that record just to ground you if those doubts start creeping in again.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's gaslighting, moving from twisting our reality to messing with our emotions. We've got guilt tripping.
Guilt trips, oh boy.
I know, right? And I feel like this is something we've all experienced.
Absolutely. We've all been on the receiving end of a guilt trip.
Totally. So instead of a friend just coming out and saying, hey, I miss you, let's hang out, they hit you with the, well, I guess you're just too busy for me these days.
Oh, yeah. Classic.
Right. And I can already feel the weight of that guilt.
Right. Like it's your fault they're feeling this way.
Exactly. And it's sneaky because they're not directly saying what they need. They're making you feel responsible for their happiness.
And that's what makes it so effective.
Yeah.
Because deep down, most of us really don't want to disappoint the people that we care about.
It's true.
But here's the thing. You are not responsible for someone else's feelings. Full stop.
Okay, yes. That is so important. It's about setting boundaries, right? Because wanting to be a good friend doesn't mean being a doormat for someone else's emotions.
100%. And that's the key takeaway here. Recognize guilt tripping for the manipulation tactic that it is. That's the first step towards establishing those boundaries.
Love that. Recognize it and rise above it. So, we've had reality bending, guilt trips. What's next on our manipulation menu?
Let's talk about something that might seem a little bit positive at first. Love bombing.
Love bombing. Ooh, okay. That actually sounds kind of fun. Like a cheesy romantic comedy montage.
Right. It can definitely have those vibes at first. Think. Being showered with gifts, constant praise, declarations of being the one, especially early on in a relationship.
Okay, I get the appeal, but I have a feeling there's a catch. What's actually going on beneath the surface of all that love?
It's about manufacturing this really intense connection really, really quickly, to the point where it can almost feel addictive.
So you get hooked on all those good feelings, but real love, I mean, that takes time to build. This just seems like, I don't know.
It's about creating dependence.
On the manipulator, right?
Exactly. And the really sneaky thing is, it plays on our own desire for connection. We all want to feel loved and desired. Love bombing takes that very real, very human need and it twists it.
So by the time that love bombing fades, you're left feeling confused, you're craving that initial high, and you've already given a lot of yourself away.
Exactly.
This is why we can't have nice things. Okay, so we've gone from really intense affection to what happens when that affection is used as a weapon.
Ah, you're talking about the dreaded silent treatment.
Ugh, yes, the sound of silence. And not in the peaceful, meditative way, like when a minor disagreement suddenly turns into radio silence.
Yeah.
No texts, no calls, no explanation. It just feels very passive-aggressive.
It can be. Now look, everyone needs space sometimes, right?
Yeah.
But when silence is used as a tool to punish or control, that's when it crosses the line into manipulation.
Totally. Because it creates this uncertainty, right?
Yeah.
You're left wondering what you did wrong, analyzing every interaction, basically driving yourself crazy.
Absolutely. And that power dynamic is really important to understand. The person giving this silent treatment holds all the cards, leaving the other person feeling anxious and unsure of themselves. And it goes back to that feeling of self-doubt, right? Like you start to question your own judgment, your own instincts.
Exactly. It's like they're slowly chipping away at your confidence. So how do you deal with that? Because I feel like confronting someone about giving you the silent treatment is just going to lead to more silence.
It's definitely tricky. I'd say sometimes the best you can do is try to state your boundaries.
Yeah.
But like really calmly and clearly, like, hey, when you're ready to talk, I'm here for it. But this whole silent treatment thing, not okay with it.
Right. So direct and assertive communication wins the day, because letting it fester is just going to make things worse in the long run. And speaking of festering, this next tactic is all about twisting things around. It's called triangulation.
Oh, triangulation. Yeah, I know this one.
Oh, tell me you have a good triangulation story. But first, explain what it is.
Okay, so triangulation. Imagine this. You have a disagreement with a friend. Instead of like talking to you directly about it, they rope in another friend.
Ugh.
Or like a coworker, a family member, anyone who will listen, really. And then they start sharing their version of the story.
It's so messed up. It's like they're trying to build their case by getting all these other people on their side.
Exactly. They control the narrative.
It's like they're creating their own little fan club and you're out in the cold.
And the worst part is, they often exaggerate or leave out crucial details to make themselves look better and you. Well, you know.
Yeah, the classic he said, she said scenario, but completely manipulated.
Exactly.
This has totally happened to me in the workplace too, like a manager pitting employees against each other instead of addressing the issue head on.
Oh, classic tactic in a toxic workplace. It's so much easier to create this environment of suspicion and competition than to like actually foster open communication.
So what's the move? If you find yourself caught in a triangle, how do you even begin to untangle that mess?
Honestly, I think it's all about refusing to play their game.
Okay, love that.
Address the issue directly with the person you have the conflict with. Let them know you're not going to engage in gossip or back-channeling.
So it's about being the bigger person, basically. Rise above it.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got gaslighting, guilt-tripping, love bombing, silent treatment, triangulation. Wow. We are on a roll here with these manipulation tactics. What other fun ones are in store for us?
Careful. Well, up next is projection. And think of it like a mental game of hot potato. But no one wants to hold on to this particular potato.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does projection hot potato work exactly?
So instead of acknowledging their own flaws or insecurities, the manipulator will project them onto you. It's like they see in you what they don't want to admit about themselves.
So they're basically holding up a mirror, but it's one of those funhouse mirrors, you know? You're getting a totally warped reflection.
Exactly. And they do it without even realizing it most of the time.
Wow. That's kind of wild. The video had this one example about someone blaming someone else for spilling milk.
Oh, I remember that one. Like, are you serious? You're blaming me for your clumsiness.
Right. And it sounds absurd when you say it out loud, but it often plays out in more subtle ways.
Right. Like maybe a partner who is constantly accusing you of being jealous or insecure.
When they're the ones feeling those things.
Exactly. It's a way to deflect their own insecurities onto someone else, create this smokescreen to hide their own stuff.
So how do you even begin to deal with that? How do you have a conversation with someone when they're basically projecting their own issues onto you?
It's tough, honestly. For me, self-awareness is key.
Yeah.
Like if you can recognize that what they're saying actually says more about them than it does about you.
You can choose not to internalize those accusations. It's like, that's your baggage, not mine.
Right. Their issues are not your responsibility to own or fix.
Easier said than done, though, right? Especially when it's coming from someone that you care about. But acknowledging it, that's got to be a good first step.
Definitely a good place to start.
Okay, so we've covered misplaced feelings, but then there's misplaced blame with blame shifting.
Oh yeah, blame shifting, the fine art of always pointing the finger elsewhere. It's so effective as a manipulation tactic because it lets the person completely avoid accountability for their actions. It's like they have this magical blame shifting button they can just hit and poof, suddenly it's all your fault.
It's like those old cartoons where the character points and then, like, a trap door opens up beneath the other person's feet.
Yes, and just like that, you're left holding the bag, and for some reason, even when you know you didn't actually do anything wrong, it can make you doubt yourself.
It's so frustrating. Like, how do you even respond in those moments? Do you engage? Do you walk away?
I mean, it depends, but standing your ground is important.
Okay, good advice.
Don't be afraid to push back against those accusations, Reiterate your perspective, because you don't have to accept blame that isn't yours to carry.
So stand strong, stay true to yourself. What's next?
Well, this one might seem a little dramatic. It's called playing the victim.
Playing the victim. Okay, I'm picturing someone throwing themselves an epic pity party and inviting everyone they know.
It can be a bit like that. Picture this. Someone gets caught doing something wrong, right? But instead of owning up to it, they launch into this whole sob story about their difficult past. Suddenly, the focus shifts from their actions to their supposed suffering.
So it's manipulating people's empathy as a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Exactly. And it's really tough because, empathy is important, right? You want to be understanding and supportive, but manipulators will exploit that.
So how do you know if someone genuinely needs support versus when they're using this as a manipulation tactic?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
I think one red flag is if they're consistently using their past struggles to excuse their current behavior.
So it's like they get stuck in this perpetual loop of victimhood, and they use it to manipulate the people around them.
Right. And while we want to have empathy, it shouldn't come at the expense of your own well-being or your ability to hold someone accountable.
Okay, that's a really good point. Empathy without boundaries is a recipe for disaster. So, we've covered a lot of ground here. What's next? What other manipulation tactics are we throwing on the pile? So many manipulation tactics, so little time. Okay, what's next?
Well, we talked about playing the victim, but this one is kind of the opposite. Stonewalling. Imagine trying to have a conversation with a brick wall.
Right.
You can talk and talk and talk, but you're not getting anything back.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. It's like, congrats on proving you have a pulse, but come on, like the video talked about this. Trying to talk to someone and they're giving you one-word answers, or they just totally shut down, avoid the issue completely.
It's so frustrating.
Yeah.
And it makes the other person feel completely invalidated, unheard.
Yeah, and often I feel like that's the whole point. Like, it's a way to control the conversation without even really engaging in it.
Right. Sometimes it's about avoiding conflict or maybe even punishing the other person. But yeah, it's not always about being overtly aggressive.
Right, but the impact is still icy. So if you find yourself talking to a brick wall, what's the move? Is it even worth trying to get through? Or are you, just banging your head against, a wall?
Sometimes giving the person space can be helpful. But if it's a recurring pattern, setting those boundaries is crucial.
Boundaries are everything.
Right, like letting them know that you're down to communicate when they are,
Yeah.
but you're not down for being shut out.
Okay, so it's about asserting your needs and not accepting that kind of treatment. Speaking of which, this next tactic is less about shutting down and more about, strategic reflection. The video called it mirroring.
Oh yeah, mirroring. It's interesting because it really plays on that deep human need to be understood, to be validated.
Oh, totally. Like, don't we all just want to feel seen?
Right. And so with mirroring, the manipulator creates this sense of connection, but they do it by subtly mimicking the other person's behavior.
Ooh, it's getting sneaky.
Right. They might mirror your opinions, your mannerisms, even how you talk.
It's like they're holding up a mirror to you, but it's one of those funhouse mirrors,
Yes. And I think that's what makes it so effective. When someone mirrors us, it makes us feel more comfortable, more trusting, which can make us way more susceptible to their influence.
Yeah, you drop your guard a little because you're like, oh, this person gets me. They're just like me.
Exactly. The video gave that example about meeting someone at a party, and they just seem to agree with everything you say, laugh at all your jokes, and you're thinking, are you my long-lost twin?
Right. Like, it's flattering for sure, but also maybe a little suspicious.
Exactly. Now, some mirroring is natural, especially when you're first building rapport with someone, but it's about being aware of the motive.
Like, is this genuine connection, or are they trying to butter me up to get something from me? Okay, so trust your gut. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Speaking of trusting your gut, this next one is all about relationships, and it's kind of brutal. Love withdrawal.
Ooh, love withdrawal. This one is especially insidious because it plays on our deepest fears of rejection and abandonment.
Okay, so with this one, instead of communicating their needs directly,
Mhm.
someone using love withdrawal basically gives their partner the cold shoulder as a way to try to get what they want.
Exactly. It could be anything from ignoring texts, withholding affection, to even threatening to end the relationship.
Yeah.
And it creates this anxiety, this uncertainty.
Oh, totally. Because you're left wondering, like, what did I do? How do I fix this? It's like a pressure cooker of emotions, and it can really mess with your head.
And that's exactly what the manipulator is banking on. The goal is to make the other person feel so off balance, so desperate to get back to that place of connection that they'll give in, just to restore a sense of peace.
So basically, another example of how important communication and healthy boundaries are in any relationship.
100%. Love should not be a bargaining chip.
Well said. Okay, we covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from gaslighting to love withdrawal. And honestly, I feel like just scratching the surface of this whole manipulation thing.
I know, right? It's a huge topic. But hopefully, just by naming these tactics, understanding a little bit of the psychology behind them, people will start to recognize them in their own lives and protect themselves.
Right. Knowledge is power. And sometimes knowing is half the battle.
Exactly. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
So true. So, to everyone listening, pay attention to those red flags, trust your gut, and never be afraid to walk away from a situation that feels unhealthy. You deserve to be treated with respect, not like a pawn in someone else's game. Until next time, keep those manipulation detectors on high alert, and as always, thanks for diving in with us.